Welcome to another episode of Founders Club. Today I'm going to be talking to Ben Reinberg, who is the founder of Alliance Consolidated Group. He's been in the business 26 plus years, and he's grown a real estate portfolio from zero to over 500 million in assets. We're going to be talking about his top recession-resistant real estate investments, his number one keys to real estate investing success, and how he packages his deals to bring his investors over 20% returns on their investment. If you have any questions, put them in the box down below or DM me on social media. As always, go ahead and roundhouse kick that like button. And if you like money, like real estate, this is the show for you. Hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you on the inside.
Welcome to Founders Club, the show for real estate entrepreneurs.
All right, well, here today with Ben. He is the founder of Alliance Consolidated Group. You've built your business from zero to 500 million in assets, which is very impressive. And just excited to talk to you about how you're investing, how you see the market, and all of those things. But why don't we just jump in, because obviously you've been in the business for 20 plus years now. Why don't we just rewind to kind of how you got into the business?
Sure. Well, I'm a CPA by trade.
Okay.
And when I graduated, the first thing I remember my mother said to me is, get a job. We're in a recession. It was 1992, and we're about to come out of it eventually. And so I got a job as accounting CPA, went through a tax season, was doing an audit with a billionaire out of New York. I won't name his name. And we were doing audits at his office of all his different files and his trusts. And he looked at me one day. He's like, "You're not an accountant." And I said, "Why would you say that?" He's like, "You're more of an entrepreneur." Long story short, one of our clients out of Los Angeles, who I developed a relationship with, got me into commercial real estate. Said, "Just do a deal. You'll figure it out." And so I did my first deal in the Chicago area. Back then, 28 years ago, it was a local and a regional business. So you'd have to go out to the property, or we canvass an area. And at the end of the day, that's how we found deals. So I found an industrial deal. I'm an expert in office, industrial, and retail. Those are I'm not I understand multifamily well. I've owned it in the past, but it's not my expertise, so to say. It's really office, industrial, and retail. And so when I first started, Chicago is a huge industrial market. And to go back, because it was regional and local, it was a great investment vehicle to invest in. Chicago's a 24-hour city. What that means is 3 shift. It's like Los Angeles, Seattle, Miami, New Orleans, etc., Savannah, Georgia, and Norfolk. Those are 24-hour cities where we have 3 shifts, because it's a port city, Chicago. And so industrial was really prevalent back in the early 90s. And what ended up happening was we ended up syndicating our first deal. And in the first week, I end up losing 45% of my income in a 2-tenant industrial building. This is my first deal. I signed recourse on the loan. I figured I was in my 20s. I had nothing to lose. My godfather was sitting on the board of a bank in Highland Park, Illinois, where I'm from. He actually got me the loan. 80% LTV, had no money, no assets. How I got that loan is I couldn't, he's deceased, so I can't go back and ask him now that I'm a lot older. But that would have been a good question for him, because I couldn't imagine that loan committee saying, "Well, he's got nothing. We're giving him 8%. Right? We'll run with him." So we lose 45% of the building. We had to manage our investors, and I had to raise somewhere about a little over $2.5 million. Took me about 3 weeks. It was all shoe leather. It wasn't emails and PDFs. I'd have to go to a conference room and somehow beg and plead and convince. I didn't have what we call our investments now, the Birkin bag. I didn't have that back then. It was more like, here's the returns. It's 8%. I'll give you 80%. I used to give away the store when I was younger, 80% of the equity. You'll be Class A members. We'll give you an 8% preferred return. And then net proceeds, excess cash were 80-20. And that was the deal when I first started. Raised it in 3 weeks. We closed. like I said, we lost 45% of the income. Within 6 months, we made it a 3-tenant building. I bought it for, I don't know, it could have been whatever the amount was. I bought it for like a little over 3 million, sold it for 6.4 million. And that's what kind of launched me. And there was actually a company called RCM from San Diego. They came out of Steve, and it was a guy named Steve Alter. And he was cutting edge in the 90s because he created what we call a war room. Now it's a vault, Dropbox, Citra. It's the same thing. It was an online deal room portal that you could load documents. No one did it. So Steve called me and I said, how much is in your database? He goes, I have 50,000 buyers. Great. We advertised and I sold it. You know, I'm a licensed broker. I don't practice brokerage, but for my first deal, I said, I want to sell it. Wow. And so I learned a lot from that deal because we needed a new roof. There were some improvements and we used Argus at the time. And so I learned in the business, if you let your buyer know the train's coming, they'll usually pay you what you want or even more. It's when they have to go back and they go through due diligence and they'll say, you know, you need a roof or parking lot needs to be redone or restriped or whatever. And then they start retrading on the price. And that happens a lot in our business. So I learned if I tell them up front, I'll achieve the value I have and build that rapport.
What do you mean by tell them up front? Like tell them everything that's wrong up front so they can build that into their numbers?
Exactly. We'll tell them, okay, you're going to have to redo the roof. We bid it out. This particular property was $350,000. Underwrite that in your financial analysis. That way they can underwrite and see how we got to our price so I can achieve my price. And that's what we're able to do. We achieve our price. Yeah. It's a way to build rapport because what's going to end up happening, you want a sophisticated buyer in our business, a sophisticated business. And if you have the right buyer, they're going to find out anyways. So then you're going to have that conversation. So if you just cut them off at the path and you tell them up front, it's a lot easier to close. And that's what it's about. Especially like right now, we're in a challenging market and people are worried about recession. You have inflation, you have rising interest rates in the middle of deals. So you might be under contract in a deal in this environment and you're worried about closing. So for that example, if I could tell someone where the issues lie in a property we're selling, it makes it a lot easier to get to the finish line. And that's what I learned when I was younger. And I carry that through today and my staff does as well. And so we're really good at taking an investment from start to finish. That's something we're outstanding at. And it shows our track record. I mean, overall, our track record is upper 20s on IRR basis, and medical, we're about 24% IRR. So it's pretty good. We've been around for a while, and I've built over 9.5 million square feet of office and industrial, and then eventually I got into syndication, and now we're starting to do funds. And so that's kind of the history of evolution. That's the evolution. So that's what I do. That's what I know. I'm not a stocks and bond guy. I understand it. I am a commercial real estate guy. That's all I know.
Yeah. So just to run that back, so you were working full time, had a friend or someone in your network say, hey, why don't you try this commercial real estate thing? Then you went out, you found a $3.5 million property, raised I'm guessing the down payment plus any repairs.
Oh, repairs and maintenance, acquisition fees, as part of the capital stack, whatever that equity was, it was a few $1,000,000 at the time, which to me, as a 23-year-old young man,
is really impressive.
Well, yeah. Well, at 23, a couple $1,000,000 is a lot. It's still a lot of money, but it was a lot of money back in the early 90s. Yeah. And I put together a package. I figured out, I was also a CPA, so I'm great at numbers. And I figured out, one thing I'm a big proponent on that I could teach your audience is whenever you package something, whatever type of real estate you do, a letter, financial analysis, a PPM, you want your documents to stand on its own. And let me explain what that means. I learned this a long time ago, and everyone at Alliance does this. I train them to do it, and my leadership teams trains those people as well. What that means is if I handed it to, say you had a 10-year-old daughter who could read and fairly intelligent, if I gave her a letter, she should be able to tell me what it's about. It's that simple. And that's what you want. You want to be able to give a document where you have no idea who's going to read it, that they can understand it. And that's part of raising equity. It's part of having success with lenders, with leasing brokers, investment sales brokers, engineers. When you can communicate, which is so critical in our business, and your documents stand on its own, well, guess what? Alleviates problems, saves time, a lot of questions, and usually builds rapport and credibility in the process. And I think a lot of people don't think about those little things, but in our business, because deals take so long to get done, to acquire and sell, lease, manage, all these are processes, and all the little details go into success when you sell a building. And we're doing that right now. We're selling buildings, and I go back from the beginning. I said, well, what created that success? And I look at all those things, and it's the little details like that. It's the constant communication. It's the good management. It's building rapport with your tenants. And when you could do all this stuff, you mitigate your risk, which is what it's about. And that's in commercial real estate. You really have to be hands-on with your investments. And that's why we have a deep-rooted staff. We have 200 plus years of experience on our leadership team. And I built that because we wanted to provide the best product for our investors in the market. And so for years, we were buying office and industrial. We got into retail. We really liked retail. Then all of a sudden, this little thing called the internet started brewing. And, back in the late 90s, you had AOL and the dial-up, and then the internet became more comfortable, I think, in the 2000s. And then, Windows was on the scene with Microsoft. And so the computer revelation was just going on. It kept growing and growing and growing. And the interesting thing is I learned the business with green ledger paper, shoe leather, and the phone call and going to meetings like this. We had a conference room in my office for years. We'd invite people in. It was positioned in a certain part of the office. That way, if something did go well, they could leave right outside the door. So it was a lot of thought. And it wasn't as fast, things didn't move as fast. When I had to make an offer on a deal, I would get a package. They would say, okay, Ben, you have 2, 3, 4 weeks to put your offer in. I have no idea who's bidding on it. Okay. So I spent all this time. We analyze it. We might go out to the property. Because remember, it was regional at the time. I might drive to Michigan, right, being from Chicago or Indiana or somewhere in Chicago that was an hour because Chicago's a large city. And I remember that you wouldn't, if you didn't get the property, you're like, okay. And you wouldn't really know what the truth was, especially if it was with a broker. So that's how the business worked. It was very relationship oriented, how to find deals not on market. We used to use plat maps in the city of Chicago. I had a wall in my original office where we taped a map of every single piece of land in like 2 of the counties, Cook County and Lake County in Illinois. And we would just solicit and market to those owners of land or if they had buildings, to find assets to acquire or to build. And that's how it was. It was a very hands-on, and that's how I learned the business. I think what gives me a leg up compared to people starting in our business or newer generation is they're so dependent on the computer that the communication lacks. Mm-hmm. I see that with my own kids too, is where I can pick up the phone and have a conversation and, whether, lack of better terms, influence, build rapport, credibility, have a conversation to explain what our position is, why we value a property a certain way. And what that does is gives you a high probability of getting a deal done. Same thing with selling. And so I see a lot of differences between different generations and experience. I think if I were young in the business, if I can improve my communication skills and really hone in on them and become a great writer, understand how to work with people from different backgrounds and ethnicities and areas of the country, that to me is where your value is. As a younger man or woman, you're going to learn the computer when you get out, when you're born practically. You get out of the womb and then all of a sudden you're learning technology. So I'm reverse. I'm learning technology, but I know the other side. So if I was younger, I would want to learn the communication side, because in commercial real estate, there's so many different variables that go on a frequent basis through the deal process that communication is everything. And where I see deals go awry or they don't have success is all because of communication. So it's one of the foundations of what becomes how you create success in business, and especially our business. And same thing, it's how do you find a lender? How do you find a deal? The foundation is communication. So it's so important.
Learning to talk to people, I think I fully agree. Like that's one of the best skills you can learn. I think today a lot of people rely too much on text messages and emails and things like that, where oftentimes just picking up the phone and hashing something out, it saves time, it's more effective. They always say, what is it? Communication is like 7% the words you use, and then like 20% tonality, and then the rest is body language. Well, at the very least, if you're on the phone, you get that extra, 20% that is tonality that doesn't come through on the text messages.
Well, you said it. I mean, you just hit on the head. When you have an email or a text and there's little nuances going on, a phone call not only makes it more efficient, but also allows you to communicate your message better. Yeah. And especially with lenders and investors. So with lenders, there's all different nuances that come up in the property. Explain to me this document, or can we talk about this? There's too much going on and too many variables to get your arms around, that if you don't have a conversation on the phone or a video call or in person, it's very hard to get a process through what I call the pipeline when you're constantly sending emails or texts. Let's say you sent a text to me and we were communicating and doing a deal, and used one word that like just aggravated me. It just changed the whole conversation. Right. When you're looking at me like, yeah, I didn't, that was just, that's how I talk. Exactly. I don't know that. Right. Yeah. So when we talk and we build rapport and we communicate, it's so much more powerful than just the handwritten. And then you take a step further. If you're going to do that, you really have to watch your words and careful what you do. Right. And I don't like doing that because we get so many emails every day, so many texts, all of us, and there's so much coming at us. It's like, if I could take a 5-minute phone call and avoid 20 texts or emails, it's more efficient. Yeah. And I think that's the skill that lacks, I see, with some of the younger folks in our business. And it's interesting. I'm really looking forward to seeing what this environment's going to happen, because what it does in our business is it does a natural cleansing. It really cleanses out people that don't work hard, people that don't focus on their communication, people that aren't willing to hustle, people that don't work a little bit extra if they have to learn, because it's a complicated business. So this upcoming environment is going to be interesting, because you're going to see a little bit of cleansing in our business. And for me, from selfish purpose, when you have 20 plus years of experience and my staff has so much experience, we actually thrive when there's chaos and bad environments. And it's why, Oliver, what we buy now is medical and veterinary properties. And that came around 17 years ago. I took a step back and we were talking to our investors, and we were like, well, where are we going from there? Like, well, we're not really fond of retail. We see the internet and we're worried, and the big boxes are shrinking. Best Buy was going from 40,000 square feet to 25,000 as a standard store. And we just took a step back and said, what makes sense? Well, medical properties produce cash flow. There's upside, and the human body is never going out of style. Mm-hmm. And it's something that I repeat over and over while I'm raising equity or putting together our capital stack, or whoever says, well, why medical? So when we first started acquiring medical, we met with a little tenant called DaVita. And at the time, dialysis was prevalent in our market. A lot of folks eat fast food. Down south, there's a lot of kidney problems and diabetes. And so I went to Denver. I met with DaVita, and they really launched me into the medical business, into the medical property business. And what happened was DaVita had a huge map of the United States.
And who is DaVita?
DaVita is a public company.
Got it.
The two largest dialysis company in the United States and one's out of Germany called Fresenius. So you have Fresenius and DaVita. They're like the Coke and Pepsi, so to speak. Right. It's kind of interesting. And so we aligned ourselves with DaVita. DaVita was being scrutinized by the government. We went to meet them. We did enough research. We knew kidney disease was just going to grow. and people were going to need dialysis. So we saw DaVita growing, we saw Fresenius growing, we saw some other nephrologists who are the doctors that administer this. We saw their practices growing. So we said, we should really look into this. And we did. And we believed in DaVita, and we were buying them at great prices and renewing them and then selling them, or we were building them. And I said, well, where should we start buying your properties or develop? And they said, take Austin, Texas, draw 300 miles of concentric circles. That's where you start. And that's what we did. We followed it. We did extremely well. And that launched us into other dialysis. It launched us into other medical properties in different niches, whether it's cardiology, epidemiology, orthology, gastroenterology, you name it, that's what we own. And that's what we focus on. So anything that you, your family, your grandparents, your parents, your friends, your colleagues, you name it, that goes and use medical services, that's what we invest in.
That's great.
So it's all geared around the human body. And what's beautiful about it is it's pandemic and recession proof. And so during the pandemic, we collected all our rents when it came to medical properties. And because if they were closed for 2 months, they had to eventually open. And so they continued to pay rent. And there was really minor issues at all in our portfolio during the pandemic. So the pandemic was stressful. We're all working remotely. In our business, there's what I call an osmosis. When you're in the office together, and you probably see this at Big Block, I can't train or help someone remotely. They can't come in my office and I can have a real good, genuine conversation. The video calls are great. I love it. And I think it acclimated all of us to it during the pandemic. But there's nothing like to be able to have that.
You lose a little of the magic, for sure.
You sure do.
Yeah.
Sure do. You have to be able to adapt. And something we do well. We're good at cutting edge, just like we started investing in medical. And 17 years ago, people thought it was crazy. Government scrutinizing medical. We don't know what's going to happen with Medicaid or Medicare. And there was just uncertainty. What's going on with health insurance? And we just said the human body is just a solid investment.
Yeah, love that.
And it's true.
Yeah.
And I started seeing all my friends and colleagues and employees, and we were talking about pets. And then I saw Petco and PetSmart and all these companies come on the scene. And I said, we should look into this. And from walking the properties and touring, I realized that the veterinarians are similar to doctors. Heavy investment, deep roots, don't like to move, high probability renewal. I said, this is similar to what we're doing in medical. And that's what he meant when he was talking to me.
That's actually really good, is that they're not likely to move and they're highly likely to renew.
Right. So in our business, and what we tell our investors and even new investors is, generally speaking, our tenants, the probability is in the 80+% of renewal. And so if you buy a property and you know how they fulfill the community's needs, what they do, what their investment is, where's their rent per market, and you look at the box that we analyze a deal and play in, we have a pretty good estimation that they're going to renew. Now, we can't predict if there's consolidation, which we've seen, or you have like this tragic event like a pandemic, or whatever might be the case, the economy suffers. But generally speaking, we're not susceptible to third-party influences, wars, bad economies, because again, the human body never goes out of style. So with that being said, I realized that when a tenant has significant investment, they serve the community, we see their financial statements, we say, okay, what's the probability they're going to be here? If it's a short-term lease, a long-term lease, is it multi-tenant? How do they interact together? Who's in the building? And then that's just the tenant side. Now we go to the actual real estate. When was it built? Quality. Parking is very big in our business. A lot of the cities require 5, 6, or 7 to 1,000 ratio. So you want that because some of the concepts, especially a multi-tenant building, you have patients that are sitting there for 2 hours, 3 hours, and they could take up a lot of parking. And there's nothing that aggravates, there's a couple things that aggravates tenants. What I call the ingress egress. And what that means is how you get into a property, how you exit a property. You ever go to a property and you're just aggravated of, how do I get into this thing? You're driving around, you gotta go down the street and come in.
Yeah, you're annoyed right off the
And so all of a sudden you're walking into a property, you're stressed out as well. Maybe you're going to the dentist, maybe you're going to get an MRI, imaging, anything. You're already a little timid and stressed going to the doctor. Everyone is. I hear this from our tenants and what their patients are like, because I think it's important to know. So you're already timid and you have some fear. And so, because you might be getting some news you don't want to hear. And so when you go to the doctor or a physician group, you want to make sure that experience is in the best light possible for their patients. So having enough parking, how do you get in? Is the roof leaking? You want your tenants to have good experiences, and that's what we provide. That's why I said we're so hands-on, because property management in our business is everything. Communication with tenants, how to tell them what I call the train's coming. We have an issue, we're going to deal with it. We're going to have to redo the parking lot, and we know you're an orthopedic practice, so you have people coming out in wheelchairs, or they got to get to the front door. So we're going to build a ramp and figure out how to accommodate you. So you have to be creative too. And I think our business is where you see a lot of success is not focusing on the problems. People say, well, spend 2% on the problems, 98% on the solutions. Our business is very reflective of that statement. You have to be a solutions person. And that's one thing I'm extremely proud of, is the people at Alliance are solution oriented. Okay, we have a problem. We've seen this movie before. How do we solve it? Okay, well, times are different. We'll have to use this, or let's hire this person. So we're very resource rich with, any side of our business, engineers, appraisers, you name it. Just like you are with Big Block, you have a lot of different companies. You have a lot of resources. And so that's what we created, was to be able to be resource rich, have people that work at Alliance that have a lot of experience, because everyone thinks that, cash flows just are rosy and they just ascend. They're like moguls. Okay. And I want to tell everyone out there, if anyone tells you that, just run, because it's the truth. And we go through different cycles, different issues, and cash flows can go up and down. And so people always ask me, they say, Ben, you've been doing this a long time. What is the key to real estate? In your business, it could be location. It could be, because residential real estate is driven off schools. So great schools can produce great results in residential. In commercial, the difference is ours is based on creditworthiness of tenants, the quality of construction, just like residential, but it's all about the ability to hold. Location's great because it might help you with rents, it might help you renew a tenant, maybe a little bit faster than something inferior. But at the end of the day, the ability to hold is the key to success in commercial real estate. And what I mean by that is you have the ability to ride through cycles. Okay. So this past cycles, we had cap rates that were extremely low. So if you could position your properties to sell, whether it be renewing leases, adding value, putting them on the market, you'd achieve great value. So we're entering into what I call a buyer's market. Cap rates are going to increase, interest rates are increasing, and that allows us to get better yields. Okay, yeah, the cost of capital is going to go up, but if we have the ability to hold, we're buying it at a better price than we did maybe a year or two ago, and we'll have the ability to hold to ride to the next cycle. That way, when cap rates compress, interest rates maybe drop a little bit, we'll have a good opportunity to sell because we've positioned it to sell at that point. So the key of commercial real estate is the ability to hold, and it will always be that way. And when you have medical properties, what we do that are based on the human body, it allows you to serve that principle. Right. And that's what's created success. People always ask me, like, what creates success? Whether you're buying multifamily, self-storage, any of the niches in commercial real estate, it will always be the ability to hold. Maybe you have a loan coming due. You got to renew it. You got to have that ability to hold. I need reserves. I have an issue where I'm short on cash flow. How do I keep my head above water through a challenge? So that to me is, someone taught me that a long time ago. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense. And I didn't really realize it until I got older. I was like, yeah, that was a spot on comment. So that's really the key, how we look at things, and what's important in commercial real estate, and how to really sustain yourself. And it's not, you have to be very careful in an environment like this, because you have to realize if interest rates are rising, I don't know if I want to stretch like maybe we normally would. Unless I look at deals, if I'm buying a medical property in San Diego around where we're sitting right now, and I have barriers to entry to compete with me, I might pay up for it because maybe no one can compete with me in that area. There's no new product coming on, zoning laws with the city, what have you. Maybe my rents are in a favorable position that my tenant's not going to move. So I might say, okay, maybe I'll pay a quarter, 50 basis points more on a cap rate for this because I'll make it up over time. Goes back to the principle, ability to hold. Ability to hold allows you to ride through different cycles. Where, again, we talked about why cash flows go this way. So when you're at a rough spot during your investment period, when you have the ability to hold, it cures everything. Maybe a year, maybe 2 years, maybe 5 years. We've owned properties where it's been over 13 years. And we did that because intermittently in those processes, maybe we went through 2 different cycles. So we had some great success for 5 years. Maybe cash flow is a little bit down. We had some vacancy. We release it, another good cycle. And so it's really, again, that specific asset, when I look at it, it's all about the ability to hold. And those principles will last forever in commercial real estate. They're not going away. And I think it's what gives us a leg up is one thing I like about what I do is, Oliver, I tell this story. Someone told me a while, and I start telling it myself, and now I own it because I've been through it. Is you start your first third of career on your back, your second third on your feet, and then your last third on your stomach. Well, now I'm on my stomach. Well, it took me a while to get there, and so it allows me to use all the deal experience and the ups and downs and the different people we associate that. You're just consistently learning, and that's what creates success. So our business is not a get quick rich business. I have a lot of investors that have traded at the Chicago Board of Trade, the Mercantile Exchange, New York Stock Exchange, very successful guys that can make money like this. Our business is what I call a marathon business. It's ability to hold. But you tell me, you're in real estate as well. I haven't found a better investment than what we do because we have tax benefits. It's all based on leverage, and our returns are great. So for a little bit of money, I can leverage that and get great returns and tax benefits. And when I sell, it's capital gains. So where can you can invest in hedge funds and different asset classes and everything else and companies and you name it. But at the end of the day, I've found that slow and steady type returns and consistency like I see in our business. And I think as we raise money for this fund, it's an easy story to tell. Here's our track record. Here's what we buy. Here's where we buy and why. We buy in areas, Oliver, that have great healthcare policies, population growth, and good healthcare markets. So where is that in the United States? And so it's what I call if let's say in front of you, here's the United States, we draw a smiley face. It's Virginia going all the way down through the Southeast and the South through Texas, New Mexico, Arizona. We come up to Colorado and Utah, and then Southern California, Orange County and San Diego County. So these are the markets we play in. And because of that, you have population growth, you have favorable tax policies, excluding California. I won't go there. People are like, why'd you move? And I can get into that. But at the end of the day, that's where we've invested. And that was a decision we made about 15 years ago. It was interesting. We got together with our investors and we said, what do you want? And they said, we like this medical. Let's really grow it. And I said, okay. And I said, where? And they said, and we had a lot of investors from Illinois. They said, we got to get out of Illinois. Taxes are killing. They're only going to go up, which now they're about to go up. They'll probably be close to California shortly. And we were in bankruptcy, our state. And we had 2 or 3 governors that went to prison. So we were in really bad shape. So a lot of uncertainty. So you're looking at saying one of the best cities in the world in Chicago, in the Chicago area, great schools. That's why everyone lives there. And you look at it and you say, well, why are we investing in here? We have a state that's not supporting business. We have a great city and the taxes are rising. So our investors are smart. They said, We got to go down south. Favorable tax laws, Tennessee, Florida, Texas, population growth. And I think at the end of the day, it has served us tremendously. You might not see as many deals when you cut yourself off for, maybe 28 states we're investing in instead of all 50. But you know what? This is a marathon business, and you have to respect that. And the moment you step out of that line, that's where the
And the market
cleansing
makes a big difference for what you're talking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I can invest in Florida, and when I sell Oliver, instead of having maybe 2 buyers interested or 1, I might have 15 or 20. And in residential is when you're selling a house and you are given a tour, okay, especially here in this wonderful market, and you have 5 people coming in every half hour. And I'm walking through a house and you're like, by the way, Ben, if you don't pay $3 million for this house, then the next guy might pay 3.1. And you start talking to me.
Yeah.
And guess what? I get this fear of missing out.
Yep. Then the bidding war starts.
Right. And then maybe your significant other or your family says, well, wait a minute, we got to grab that house because the kid's got to be in the school district. So that's the beauty of where we invest. We can correlate that and say we have a higher probability of success when we invest in certain areas of Florida. And so we've been investing in Florida forever. And I don't know, maybe I'm crazy. I love the hurricane areas. I've done so well. I've done well in New Orleans, Alabama, Florida, Texas. And we've been through hurricanes. We've been through different crises. And I've learned from it. We went through Katrina in New Orleans. And one of the things I did was I had a guy that worked for me, a maintenance guy. And I basically took care of him and his family for 2 weeks. We put him up in a hotel because he was important to us. And we had a nice sized portfolio down there at the time. Now we have 1 asset left out of it. And I learned that taking care of people and going the extra mile will serve you in different forms. And so I still keep in touch with him. And it's rewarding because his daughter was 6 years old at the time. And she called me to thank me. After 2 weeks, lost his house, his car. That's how bad the flooding was. And he lived in the French Quarter. And so we did all these things for his family, and she's now off to college. Okay. So it just shows you how long ago this was. And we learn from these different experiences we go through, and it just helps us figure out how to deal with challenges. And I think at the end of the day, that's what it comes back to is ability to hold, being solutions-oriented people in your company. And that allows you to have consistency throughout. So,
yeah, couldn't agree more. I think I wrote a couple notes here. I think ability to hold is the key. Let's call that word of the day, phrase of the day. Because I was wondering how you got into medical, but it makes sense how you took that path and identified the niche, and then kind of sounds like found yourself a pretty big company to back you for those types of deals. And it makes total sense because, like you were saying, the human body never goes out of style. People are always going to need medical help, whether the economy's good, the economy's bad, there's a pandemic, there's no pandemic, whatever it is, there's always going to be that need. So I love how safe that is. And then I love what you said about it's all about just the ability to hold, because I couldn't agree more. I don't think there is a better asset class out there than commercial real estate, whether it's multifamily, whether it's the type of stuff you're talking about, veterinary clinics. I also totally agree with. But at the end of the day, as long as when you buy the deal, you have enough cash flow to cover all the bills, it doesn't matter if the market goes up, down, sideways, left, right, whatever, because you can just hold until the time is right, and then sell it eventually to make your gains. And then also at the same time, like the longer you hold it, other people are paying down the principal. Now you can refinance, you can get your cash back. So I'm personally a big believer on that. Just we do, more multifamily stuff out in like Arizona, but same thing, buy a 30-unit building, make the improvements, make it nice, stabilize rents, and then just hold. Right. And then, the cash flow comes up. We refinance the buildings a few years later. We get all of our capital back, and we still own the asset, still cash flows. So,
and the other thing that's really important for your listeners is how do you structure your debt? How do you structure your capital stack, your equity and debt? How does it come together? And what's so important for your audience to learn is position yourself with flexibility with your lender. Okay. So I'll give everyone what I call a nugget, a golden nugget that I learned a long time ago that you can take with you.
We love nuggets.
Okay. So here we go. So one is you don't want to over leverage your property. I know you're scared. You got to raise money and say, well, Ben, I'd rather raise 20% instead of 35 or 40. Believe me, and I can tell you from experience, ups and downs, bring in more equity. Even if you have to pay your investors a lower return, like you say, okay, well, I know I can raise if I pay an 8 pref. It's really attractive. But if you pay a 6 and it mitigates the investor's risk, mitigates your risk, because maybe you sign on a loan, maybe you don't. And also it gives you the ability when you refinance, you don't have as much leverage on the value. So again, flexibility is important. You want to negotiate prepayment penalties. You want to negotiate what works. You want to look at your cash flow. And a lot of people shy away from what I call shorter term amortizations, the 15 or the 20. But sometimes you want to look at those variables because you pay down debt. Especially what everyone forgets is, as a sponsor, when you're out there and you're raising money, when you sell the property, well, if you pay down debt, guess what? Your profit's bigger on the back end. If you took a same purchase price or sale price on an asset, and a lot of people forget that. So you want to look at where you start, what your goal is, where you're going to end, and how do you leverage your properties. I am a big proponent of using local banks and regional banks because Ben Reinberg likes control in his deals. It's very important to me to have control. I'll tell you why. You come up and you're renewing a lease, or you have a large, in our case, a hospital system, and they don't care because they're Goliath and you're David. And they're saying, it's true. I've been through this where we're at the edge of the cliff, both of us, totally. And they're like, okay, Alliance, are you going to jump or are we jumping? And we hold our feet strong. You just have to. You have to have that sense in you, like, I'm going to go toe to toe with huge corporation, and we do it all the time. Well, what happens is if I finance it right and I have flexibility, I call my lender and say, hey, take a hospital system here. Scripps, I believe down here is a big one, or Hoag. So if Scripps is saying, well, we got to go to our committee and we got to figure out rent and this and that, and they're into their holdover period. And for anyone who doesn't know, your holdover period is after the lease expires. There's usually a clause in our lease where it says you're going to pay 200, 175, 150% of your rent that you've been paying. Okay. So usually if you structure it right, it's pretty painful for a tenant to say, Oliver, I got to pay 50, 100% more on top of what I was paying. Yes, you do in holdover. So no one likes holdover because it also provides uncertainty. I could put a sign on the property and say, okay, you're out. And again, go back to medical, deep roots, purpose in the community. They don't want to move. So all of a sudden I have to lightly threaten them that you might have to move. It changes the dynamic and the leverage of the negotiation. So what ends up happening is that when you have the right financing, and I could pick up my phone and call the lender. It's why I shy away from, I've done CMBS financing. For anyone who doesn't know, that's bond Wall Street backed financing. You also have life insurance companies, and you have different servicers that handle all this. So now you got to deal with multiple people. If I can't pick up a phone and call someone and have a conversation, it goes back to our communication. You see how everything starts coming together. And so all of a sudden it's like, I'm trying to renew my tenant. He's in holdover. My loan's coming due in 2 months. I need a 6-month extension. Let me get through this a year. If you do all the right things, the communicating, properly managing it, and the lender sees everything going on. Okay. And then what's nice about Alliance is we have a lot of experience. So they know we're going to add value. They know that we're going through a typical process, and these tenants take a while to renew. All of a sudden that pressure goes away. You focus on how to add value. And then when you do, you have the opportunity to sell it, refinance it, and also the ability to hold. So it all comes together. So financing is really important for your listeners, how you finance it. And if you're just starting out in the business, whether it's multifamily, whether you're investing in residential, whatever it is, use a lender or a bank that you can have a conversation with and that will pick up the phone and communicate. And people always ask me, like, how do you interview a bank? And I actually take an approach where a lot of people, especially when you're younger, you feel like you're the person being interviewed for the job, so to speak. I flip it on its head and I say, no, I'm interviewing you. This is my deal. Right. It's more about, and I go shopping and people are like, well, do you depend on one lender? Never. Look at 3 to 4 lenders if you're buying a piece of commercial real estate. Look at what their terms are. I also look at, a lot of people get polarized and say, well, this guy has cheaper capital. Maybe they're going to be a pain in the butt. Maybe they're not going to do what they say they do. Maybe they're not going to be there at the altar when you have an issue. So one of the things that I do is I look at who I'm doing business with, the relationship. I always walk in the bank. I said, this is a relationship. I want a relationship. We're going to do multiple deals. We're a large company. We buy all over the country. This is how we do business. I put the box for them of where we want to play. And a lot of them look at it and they'll say, okay, we like the debt service coverage. We like the sponsorship, this and this. So to go back to my point with your younger listeners or people just getting started is don't take on as much leverage, raise more equity, and it won't be painful. If you have to raise an extra $1 million or $2 million, it is worth it in spades because it will go back to our principle of the ability to hold. We'll create more profits for you. And remember, it's a marathon business. You want to be able to sustain yourself and your company for a long period of time. So that's how we structure our deals. And it's created success and allows us to be able to tackle all the challenges that come up that are unexpected in any business, in our business. And so that's why I recommend. So really focus on your financing and how you're doing it. And don't be what I call penny wise and pound foolish. You don't need the best interest rate. You don't need the best amortization. What you want is a relationship. And hopefully that relationship honors what's going on in the market. It's like, hey, you're charging me 250, you're charging me 250 over what's now called the SOFR. It replaced LIBOR over SOFR. Well, the next guy's charging me 200. Well, this guy's charging me 150. Look at all on a holistic approach. Maybe you go with the 200 guy because he builds the relationships of the 150. And the extra 50 basis points is a hidden value that you might not see today that will pay off somewhere in the process. And that to me is a really important, no one talks about that in our business. And it's one of the things, Oliver, is that when I started my personal brand, I met with one of my mentors and he took me back and he said, what's your mission? Who are you? And I said, business, health, and relationships. And that's where my podcast, Ben Reinberg, I Own It, how that came about. And I realized the guys that were baby boomers, a little bit older, I'm a Gen X at 52. And I realized that no one is teaching the business and they're sure not teaching the business right. So I said, there's an opportunity to give back and help people, especially like your audience and other people. Say, what's your niche in commercial real estate you want to invest in? How do you put a deal together? How do you raise equity? How do you get a loan? There's so many topics that I had to spend grinding in Saturdays and Sundays and nights figuring out what that meant. And I said, well, wouldn't it be great if I can at least teach the basics and get into some details over time with someone that they can go and get into a wealth building business with great tax benefits and see the investments we do and have the opportunity to buy whatever piece of real estate they want. And that's where I'm heading in my career as Alliance flourishes. My leadership team is really running the company now with me oversee it. I mean, people say, well, Ben, it's your brand. Yeah, it is, but I can't do it alone. The people that work for me and my leadership team are so special. They're incredible people that work for me, and I'm very blessed and grateful. And that has allowed me to explore what I really love, and that's teaching people and helping people. And that's where I could see my next career going. And so we're developing content to do this and teach it. And it's why I'm excited to be out here, because it seems like a lot of these what I call speakers, content creators, influencers, whatever. I didn't understand this until I actually bought a house out here. I started moving out here and then started meeting different people that we know together and really started learning. So I'm excited. It's kind of a new chapter in my life and a lot of growth. And I'm a big personal development guy. I'm always working on myself and learning. And I'm excited about the future. And should be a nice run ahead of us.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I like what you said earlier about the cleansing, because I do think that, when the market shifts, the weaker hands get pushed out and the strong hands are going to come in and it's going to be a huge opportunity. And so I think, as long as people are out there and they're prepared and they're positioned and they make the right moves and they work maybe 20% harder and make 20% more phone calls and do all of those things, that, you can really expand your market share in the type of market that's coming.
Well, people always say to me, like, when chaos is in the market or we're heading into a recession, what do? You work harder. Mm-hmm. You value the time to say, okay, I have opportunity here. I am going to grab it. I'm not going to be lazy. I'm going to focus my time and energy on what I have to do. And I'm even going to expand myself and my energy in order to flourish. Because when the market gets better, then you could take advantage of all the hard work that you did. And yeah, maybe you could now take a step back a little bit. Mm-hmm. And so I just feel that people ask me all the time, like, how do I survive in this market? I'm like, real simple: persistence, focus, show up, whether you have an office or what you're working out of your home, show up to work. Mm-hmm. If you're consistent and you show up to work every day in this business, commercial real estate, I'm sure residential is no different. I said, okay, you get rewarded. Yeah. I call it, the real estate gods. I've been saying it for a while, will reward you for hard work. You might have a bad day here, good day, a couple bad days in a week or whatever. If you do those little things, you'll get rewarded. The universe will step up and take care of you. And that's been the story of my career, is that I don't know everything, Oliver, but I am really good at bringing in the resources to surround me and help me get to where I need to be. And it goes with people at Alliance, goes with relationships, colleagues. And I love it because I'm able to share all my hard work with people, whether it be investors making them a lot of money, whether it be giving someone in real estate says, hey, I don't understand environmental. Can you explain it to me, Ben? So I do a lot of teaching. And I think what I learned was, I'm doing all this teaching. Why not be able to teach more people and scale it? And I think that's where my personal brand really has starting to take off. And I've noticed. And I'm excited about it because I don't know many people that teach what I do, especially the right way. And I look forward to doing it the right way and teaching someone that grew up in an environment with maybe not good parenting or not a good environment or not a good school system, or grew up where it was a rough area with gangs or poverty, and being able to take a young man or woman out of their situation, their environment, and say, hey, there is a better life. You can build wealth. You can do it if you work hard and you're persistent. It's not going to be easy. It never is. It wasn't for me. I didn't come from money. I had to earn it. And you will too. But here's what you do. And I'm going to mentor and guide you to show you. And I think that's real powerful because I didn't have that opportunity as a young man. And I wish I did. I wish I had someone like me or like you that could grab me and say, focus here, put your energy here. Don't worry about that. Don't get upset by that. No one told me that thing. I had to have maybe employees who are outside like, don't handle it like that or do this. So I would love me personally to have that experience. So I figure, well, if that's something I would want, why not benefit someone else that doesn't have that? Yeah. And I think there's a lot of people out there, they think what I do is extremely sexy, which I guess looking at it from the outside, maybe it does look like it. We buy big buildings and campuses and you see some of the people in our industry and, whether it be the Irvine companies on all these and, Sam Zell and you look at all the icons, Al Tobman, and the list goes on and on in our business. And people see these people and they read about them and they see the success. But what they don't see is all the details and hard work and grinding and risks they took to become that person. And you need that mentorship. You need that, let me shorten your learning curve. That's the one thing that I didn't have that I wish I would have had, is that someone to shorten my learning curve. But I don't think I'd be the person I am if I didn't go through those experiences. And I think those experiences is what creates wealth and value and really benefits our investors, where they can be passive and they're leveraging into Alliance's experience and all the resources and everything we do. And that's what I want to share with these folks that are going to learn from me, is the ability to be able to say, hey, I can do it. I know there's risk involved. There's hard work, but I'm going to put my toe in the water and then walk in the water, and then Ben's going to bring me in deeper. And that's what I envision happening and will happen. And I'm excited about it. To me, it's very rewarding to provide something that no one did in our business and doing it the right way. And I've been looking at it and eyeing it for years. And finally, we're doing it. So I'm excited about it. We're just finished up our content, and we're going to be proceeding with it.
And
so
on that note, the I Own It podcast is definitely where people can check you out. What
Yes.
about Instagram and all that? You want to drop your handle?
Yeah, sure. So it's at the real Ben Reinberg. We did that because I started seeing everyone had these fake accounts. So I said, well, let's just come out of the box and say at the real Ben Reinberg. But if everyone goes to benreinberg.com, that's the best way to follow us. It has, the I Own It podcast. The I Own It podcast, if you type in Ben Reinberg, I Own It, you could see on every major platform, just like you're on Apple, Spotify, all these different ones. And then go to our company website, Alliance CGC, CharlieGeorgeCharlie.com. That gives you an indication of not only who we are, but I do a lot of writing. So Oliver, about 18 years ago, I started writing a blog. And that was a way that I gave back at the time. And now I'm changing the way I give back. And so what that will do is not only educate you on different asset classes in our business, but also medical properties and veterinary and what we do. And you can go on that website and it becomes like a library for learning, as well as learning about what we do and how to connect with us. And so it's a really holistic approach. And we'll keep doing that. We'll keep educating. And we find that's what helps create our success and brings in a lot of deal flow, a lot of investors, lenders, et cetera, and kind of all ties together. So that's how you follow us.
Fund, right, for people that want to invest.
Yes.
Where can people learn more about that? If you like the idea of these type of investments, you can either go out there and do it yourself, or you can work with a guy like Ben and let his experience go to work for you.
Let me tell you about why we created the funds. The benefits that we learned is that we wanted to provide the best vehicle for our investors. We've been syndicating for years, great track record, tax benefits, investors did well. We started researching, and a couple of years ago, a lot of investors says, why don't you do a fund? You've been doing this for years. Why have to raise money every single deal? Well, when we were raising money for every deal, Oliver, we're selling out between 10 minutes and 3 hours. So it wasn't like a lot of stress, because we'd bring a deal to the market. We use technology. We use texting programs and emails. And all of a sudden, people would call our investor relations department and say, you would call and say, hey, I'm in for 50,000, 100,000, because our minimums are 50,000, our syndications. And so we would raise 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 million real quick, because we play between 3 million and 25 million per acquisition. So with the fund, I looked into it and I said, okay, why is everyone saying this? And let me look into it. The cost of capital is better. We can get a subscription line against the commitments. We get, because of the buying power we have, we get better loans from our banks, because they want more in loans from us. So they're tighten up a little bit for you. Right. Most people didn't realize that. Yeah. The other thing is the buying power is great. I can go in and we already have a great track record and a name out in the market around the United States, but I can go in and buy a deal where they know with my fund I'm going to close. They know I got to get money on the street and start generating returns. They know we have a great track record and we do what we say we do. Normally, we put a deal under contract, we close. It's rare that we pull out of a deal. I can only name a handful over 28 years. So with that in mind, the brokerage community says, well, that $5 million price might be 4.5, 4.6, 4.7, 4.3. with the buying power we have. And we close quicker so we could generate. So the buying power. So you got cost of capital, buying power. And the third thing is diversification. Think about this. If you invested $500,000, say in a year with me, you put $100,000 in over 5 deals. You're only in 5 deals. God forbid 2 deals don't go as well, or I have to suspend distributions, whatever might be the case. And that's looking at the worst case. Usually it doesn't happen, but it can. I'll take your 500,000 that you put in for 1 year, and we'll put over 25 properties. I'll 5x your risk profile. So it becomes attractive. So diversification, cost of capital, and your buying power is why we did it and why we're excited. And the other thing is the scalability, because the equity we raised, the $50 million, we don't have to use all the equity in the capital stack with the fund. You can use a proportion. You might say, look, Oliver, we're going to use 80% of the equity for this $20 million acquisition, and we're going to syndicate $2 million. So that way, what that does is allows the equity to buy more deals. So maybe it becomes 30 assets in the fund, 35. So now I'm diversifying you more, and you're scaling into bigger properties, which means bigger profits, bigger returns. So investing in a fund is so much more advantageous than investing in our syndications. I love our syndications. That's my bread and butter. That's how I grew up in the business. But when I look at this fund model, and as we take it forward in the future, it's what's best for the public and our investors, our existing investors, new investors, and people that want to diversify their capital, where they like investing in what I call cowboy deals, more risk, but they can invest in a cash flowing, secure, profitable investments like what Alliance does, and that's medical properties. And again, with the human body never going out of style, think about it. Are you more comfortable diversifying your capital slice into that, and then do your other stuff? Yeah, do your cowboy stuff. That's fine. Yeah. I do too. I invest in things that, I'm not as educated because I'm betting on the person that is a colleague of mine. Right. I do that a lot. But when you can kick the bricks and mortar, you can go see every one of our deals. You could talk to anyone on our staff. My investor relations department is second to none in communication and white glove service. I'm a big proponent of white glove service. Mm-hmm. And that's why I invest in our fund. That's why I invest in our syndications. It's because I am shoulder to shoulder with my investors, and I believe in what we do. And I say out to the public, you got a better investment than what I do. I'd love to see it. Let's hear it. Yeah. I haven't found it yet. And so that's my story. And so that's for the fund, it's a great investment. The minimums are 100,000, diversified over double-digit properties, tax benefits, and in this environment, I believe we're going to outperform our projections. We're projecting about doubling, 2.5 times your money in a 5-year period. I think there's a good probability we're going to exceed that. Why? Cap rates are going to rise. Cost of capital will rise, won't get out of hand. But what happens is the banks are limiting their liquidity. And no one really is talking about it yet, but I'm seeing it. And when you look at the economic reports from the different big banks, you see what they're talking about. They know a recession's coming. They know, and they're ahead. They're always ahead of everyone. Okay, because I'm doing deals right now where I'm financing. And I say, "What's going on?" They're like, "We're tightening our liquidity." Yeah. So by the way, Oliver, you're gonna have to pay a little bit more money for the money. Well, or they're gonna be very selective. And so when you're new to the business, and I say, "Don't over lever it." Well, if you're going to get that loan in this environment, you better not over leverage your property. So for us, knowing that and the quality of sponsor we have, we love this type of this environment, because like we said, with the cleansing, it's going to allow us to get loans that most people can't. So when you invest in our fund, it's unique, great experience, great leadership team, great returns, conservative with upside, tax benefits. It's why I love what we do, and why I'll probably work for another 2.5 decades, because I just love it. And I love the ride. And it's a way for me to kind of look at where I'm putting my money and the investors and everything. And so it's been a great experience. And to date, it's been a good career, and I anticipate it will continue. Sounds like it. So
I got a quick fund question for you.
Yes, sir.
We've looked at the fund model before, and right now we do some syndications and stuff. When you started the fund, did you have deals already, or did you raise the money and then go do deals?
It's a great question, Oliver. Great question. I had this debate with myself for a few months.
Okay.
We stopped acquiring properties for about 6 months while we were working on this fund. I didn't want any distractions, and I didn't want to be in the middle of creating fund documents and what my structure would be without doing my homework. And then, and I'm not saying that was the right way. I look back and said, well, I probably could have done it. I wanted to be conservative in my approach, and I'm fairly conservative. So what I did was we created the fund. We started raising the fund. And with our track record, it made it a little bit easier. Some people that are younger that I talked to about funds, they asked me, and I said, find a deal. Do it as a syndication initially, but say to your folks like, hey, we're going to put this in a fund. This is going to be the first deal. I'll take your capital that you put in the syndication, and we're going to create a fund model. And so if you can get your 10, 15, 20 investors, start with a small deal to buy in, that's how you could seed it too. We took a little bit different approach. We took an approach I don't recommend to anyone, but we do it because of our experiences. We're going to invest in people. We're going to put together a whole fund administration department, which we have, which is expensive and complicated. We're going to create the docs. We're going to have consultants, and we're going to create the best structure possible. And that's what we did. We took 6 months. We said, we're going to have different classes, different returns. We're going to have incentives. We spent 30 days just figuring out what the incentives were.
Yeah, exactly.
So it takes time. So now we have 5 deals that we're about to close on that are going to get loaded into the fund in Florida and in Las Vegas. And so I'm really excited because our investors are going to benefit. And it shows new investors coming in like, hey, let's show you what we're buying already. So it just depends. Everyone's different asset classes. If you're investing in multifamily, say you're a multifamily investor, I would find a deal that works for you. I would close on it as a syndication and say, working on the fund documents, have them sign a piece of paper saying, okay, our preferred return is going to mirror what the funds looks like. You're aware of that. And you explain it to them up front. If anything changes, you explain to, transparency is everything and building credibility. So that's a way to do it for people to get started, if I had to give advice. If you're going to go out and raise money, it's different when you're Alliance and you've been doing this a long time and you're an expert in your field and have a track record where I could show 20 properties,
all the deals that you've done,
just in medical for 5 years, not even all of them, just a portion of here's 20 deals, start to finish, 24% IRR. And I could tell different stories about them. Sold the air rights above this building, which added value, because telling stories is huge in raising equity. Everyone forgets that. And so if I can do this throughout the process and raise money, that's one way to do it. A lot of people get hung up and say, well, do I need to have assets in the door to start a fund? No, you don't. However, depending on your track record, your experience in the asset class, you might want to consider finding that first deal, that multifamily, if that's your niche. A lot of people like multifamily. And you syndicate it and you have those conditions that this is going into a fund. And knowing ahead of time or while you're doing the syndication, you create the structure for the syndication congruent with the fund. I'm paying you a 6 pref. Okay. In Chicago, it would be a 4 for multifamily. Paying you a 4, and I'm going to give you, a young Ben Reinberg 70%, 80, 65, whatever. Yeah. Our syndications were 50-50 with our investors, but that's how you would do it. You would say, and you might say, hey, if I'm going to do 75-25 splits on excess cash flow and net proceeds on sale, okay, you get a 6, 75%. Great. Your investors love it. By the way, this is exactly what the fund's going to look like. And then you get into better cost of capital, buying power, diversification. If someone's going to invest with you in that multifamily and they trust you and like you and know you're competent and have a good foundation, and then you're like, okay, I'm going to 5X your money. And here's what you could do is if someone says, well, Oliver, I'm going to give you $200,000. Okay. Maybe that's your commitment for the fund. By the way, I'm going to raise another 20 million. You're still going to have portions of those deals. So they're just focused on the one deal you're invested in, and you're going to bring in other equity.
Right.
And then what ends up happening, you get referrals from those people, new investors, the guys that came in early. What you do is you give them a nice incentive. You thank them. You know what? You're 6. I'm going to pay you 7 or 8. I'm going to accrue that extra point. That's what we're doing in this fund. We said the first $5 million raised between $100,000 and $999,000. I was in bed one night and I said, how is this going to work? Because we have existing investors, and how are we going to put this together? And I said, well, if we do $100,999, you'll go from a 6 to a 7. You'll jump up a class. We have a C, B, and an A. We said the first 20 million raise, if you commit over 100,000, you'll go from a 7 to an 8. And that's how we did. And it's been great because it honors existing investors. It honors people that come in early. So with your syndication, or for anyone out there, if you're doing a multifamily syndication and you want to put it into a fund, think about valuing the people that got you to the dance. As I said, always value the people that get you to dance. And with that being said, is that will allow you to get to that fund amount you want. And then you perform and you keep going, and all of a sudden you're on your next fund. And that to me is, I think, where the magic bullet lies, is honoring the people that come in early and figuring out, because here's the thing. If you're raising $3 million for an acquisition or $5 million or whatever it is, and those initial guys don't have to put any more money in the fund you're raising, and you're confident you can bring in other investors to support that fund, to me, it's a no-brainer. And that's how you transition from a syndication to a fund that I see as a different. We took a different approach. Like, we're going to raise money, and as we invest in deals, we do what's called a call fund. We call it proportionate share, which I advise everyone, and that's how we do it. It's everyone's intuition and gut should help them, guide them to where they want to be. So that's how I would deal with your question about how do you transition into a fund. Find a deal. Find a deal you have experience at, and find a deal you love and a niche that works for you, and just do it. You just have to, a lot of people, and all of us, I knew when I was younger, I was too stupid to be fearful. Okay. Now that I'm old and gray and experienced, you have to get over those fears of, I can raise money, I can get debt. And Oliver, that's the reason why my personal brand is so important, because teaching this stuff there's a lot of mindset. There's a lot of, I don't want to show up to work. Usually you do things when you don't want to do them. And I think when they could hear it from someone that's been there and done that and has experience, I think is really powerful to say, I bleed like you. I breathe like you. We're all the same. Okay. We all have our mind that is questioning if we're good enough. Yeah. We have our family, we have friends, we have people that are doubting us. Well, I'm going to be the guy helping them champion to say, you are good enough. You can do this. You have a mind that can do this. It doesn't matter. You're man, woman, whoever, different backgrounds, ethnicity, you name it. We're all the same. And it's all about how bad you want it. How bad are you willing to sacrifice other things in your life to do what you need to do? And I think commercial real estate is the ultimate litmus test for that. It's about persistence. It's about showing up. It's about character, integrity, transparency, all of it. And when you can understand that and learn and constantly learn how to master it and share it, it just comes back to you. And so I feel that anyone out there that's looking to get into commercial real estate or residential or work for a big block realty, and it's something you're passionate about, just go ahead and do it. Just like pick up the phone and call Oliver or Sam. Pick up the phone and call Ben if you want to invest. Pick up or figure out how to do it yourself if you can't. And so I believe it's just a lot of it is your mind that is what's always blocking you, always challenging you, and saying to yourself, I don't know, I can't get this loan. It's a real pain in the ass to raise equity.
The market, this and that.
Everyone blames the market. I can't do something because I'm not wealthy enough. I'm not educated enough. I don't have the resources. Okay, I can't sustain it. Well, you know what? There's different ways to position it. Bring in a partner. Bring in a Ben Reinberg or an Oliver. Learn, teach yourself, read books, whatever you got to do. Again, it's all in the mind. How bad do I want it? I say that to my employees, okay? Because eventually, Ben Reinberg's not running Alliance eventually. So someone in my staff is going to step up and be the CEO and become me, which is great. I can't wait to see who that is. And I say to everyone that works for me, how bad do you want it? Because if you want that bad enough, you will get it and you will earn it and you will see it. And I will be so blessed to see it and grateful. I can't wait. It's the same thing when you're starting out, whether you're a realtor or an investor, anything in real estate. Real estate is very challenging. Everyone thinks it's like, okay, like big block, you go and you get like a $10 million listing and you sell it and they're like, oh my God, look at these guys. They just got a listing and they sold it because they're in a great market. Well, no one talks about what did you have to do for years to get to that point, to build that credibility where someone called you or Sam and said, we have a house we want to sell. We'd like to hire you guys. Well, no one thinks about what it took for you guys, the risk, the amount of phone calls, the shoe leather, the emails, the letters, the marketing pieces, the flyers, the networking events, all these things, time away from your family, worrying at night, like, am I doing the right thing? No one knows that. Mm-hmm. It looks easy. And
TV
so
shows make it look easy.
Oh, everything does. The internet and social media makes it look easier, but no one's in your shoes. And so I say, well, here's what the shoes look like. That's my job. And when I teach kids and people that are starting out, as well as my employees, someone always said to me, okay, I was in Arizona at dinner and I posted something on social media and it was always respect the founder's journey. And I was at dinner with this guy and his wife, and we were in Summerlin. Actually, it wasn't Arizona; it was Summerlin, Nevada. Excuse me. We were at a really cool restaurant, and we were drinking and having fun. And he's a good friend of mine. He said, "Always respect the founder's journey." I started thinking about it. I'm like, that's freaking brilliant, because it goes to what are the characteristics of these founders, these big blocks, these alliances that create the success. And if you're a young man or woman getting started in business, or you are, maybe want to change careers, that's what it takes. That persistence, showing up, hard work, and all these little things. And so respecting the founder's journey to me is such a great statement, because it kind of mirrors all these little things that create success.
Yeah, I love respecting the founder's journey. I mean, that's why I created this podcast too, because I wanted to talk to other founders. I wanted to also give back to the agents, the real estate community. And you hear a lot of the same themes over and over from all these successful people. And eventually it starts to click, right? And then eventually people start to make changes. And that's when they see real results in their business, which is exciting.
And it's what I was excited to come talk to you, because I said, God, it's kind of cool. It's called Founders Club. And I said, and that's what I believe, it's respecting the founder's journey. Yeah. So it's very interesting how the name of your show is that. Yeah. So I'm grateful to be here.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you coming down. Okay. I have two quick questions I want to wrap with.
Sure.
And then we can continue about the rest of our days. But, market is shifting. Interest rates are going up. In 60 seconds or less, what would you say is a good tip right now for just finding deals in this type of environment?
It's interesting, because there's a gap between what sellers want and what buyers want to pay. So my suggestion is make offers and have a system to follow up, because eventually these prices will drop and you will obtain some of these assets. That's number one. Number two is buy real estate in this market. The CPI index throughout the country, my belief and my analysis, is in the teens. Some areas it shows 78%. The delta between the CPI index and the cost to borrow is so great that when you put leverage on a property, you are making money. So buy assets, Put offers out. Don't be afraid if you're lower than the asking, whether it's residential or commercial. Just do it and then have a system to follow up. And believe me, you will have success in this market. That's how you handle it. Low leverage, align yourself with good lenders, get long-term debt, take advantage of these interest rates right now. That's what we do. It's like, give me a 10-year loan, a 9, a 12, whatever I can get my runway, I'm taking. So good runway. You want put offers out. Don't be shy. Don't be embarrassed if you're less than what they're asking for, and just keep going and be persistent, and you'll see success. A lot of success in this market.
Yes, that's great. And that was a great point too. Is it's still cheap to borrow money on a historical perspective. Like if you look over 30 years, we're still on the really low end of where interest rates are. So great time to keep going.
Absolutely.
Last question I have is, I got 2 young boys at home, and I'm always trying to coach them and train them to become young leaders. And so I like to ask all the guests on what you would say to the younger folks out there on what it takes to be successful in business and life.
I would say I have 2 sons that are at USC, and they're about to head into the real world. I have 3 kids, and it's interesting because I'm living it right now. Okay. And I'm a big proponent of don't go work for someone else. And I know some of the parents out there are probably going to kill me for saying this, but that's where I came from. And I believe anyone can do anything. So what I like to say to young talent is to find your mission in life. What do you like to do? What is it that every day you're going to want to show up to that job? What really resonates with you, that aligns with you? Some people are family people. Some people like business. Some people like personal development. Take whatever it is, take the time and say, okay, who am I? And what I would do, and if someone told me this a long time ago, someone asked me a similar question, is personal development. I would work on myself as a young man or woman and become the best version of myself, because that will carry through to whenever I am in life. So that would be step 1. Step 2 is find out what your mission is. Why are you here? We all have a purpose in life. That's what the universe does. And knowing your purpose in life and who you are will guide you to say, okay, you're Oliver Graff. I'm going to wake up because I love residential real estate. I love teaching people and doing what I do. And I love to paint. So maybe painting is your mission and that's your career. So I think and if you could focus on, be persistent with that niche that you're passionate about, I think that's where the success lies. Where I see a lot of people fail is they're not working within their values or their mission. So for example, if someone works at Alliance and they're in a department or a position and it doesn't align with their values or their mission, they don't last. And so you want to put your kids, your 2 boys, and they're young still, so they're going to evolve. Okay, mine are older, mine are men. Yeah, mine have their own opinions and but everything that goes on. I mean, they're real men, except for they still are on my payroll for some reason. But with that being said, with your kids, they'll evolve, and as they get older, ask them what do you like, and talk to them and communicate with them. It's so important. And at that point, they'll know where to go. They'll create their own lives. I'm a big proponent of starting a business. Okay. However, I also think there's a need where you can be in a business and learn and take less risks and get mentored. Yeah. And that way, when you get in your 40s or your 50s or late 30s, you can expand your horizons, start a company, do this, do that, or start a new division within the company, add value. So when I go back and I look at the foundation to answer your question, I know this was a long way around, is improve your foundation. Okay. Our parents screw us up when we're 3 to 7 years old. It's like 5 years old. They just do. They have different values. They grew up in different generations. So the only one you're responsible for is yourself. So if you could work on yourself, and it's why I've gotten into, Oliver, the last 10 years, personal development. I realized, because we didn't have the internet and technology, I woke up and I said, man, I'm really screwed up. I got to work on myself. I got to improve my communication. Things are changing. Technology is changing. My communication has to improve. So I just kind of took a step back and I said, okay, well, if I would have done this when I was 22, 23, 24, like I went to college and got out, or if I was 18 and started in the workplace, that's what I would do. Build my foundation. And another thing is, I don't think you have to go to college to be successful. I went to Indiana University. Okay. I went to accounting, great foundation. I was very fortunate I can go to college. I think it goes back to how bad you want it in life. And if I didn't go to college and I was 18, I don't think I'd be any different today. In fact, maybe I'd be a little bit more advanced. Maybe I would have had different relationships. Maybe I would have been hungrier, which would create more wealth. So my advice to your audience and to anyone listening is work on yourself. Be the best version of yourself. Find something that you can live within your mission and your values. And if you could do that every day, you'll wake up hungry and excited to be to work, because that's who I want around me. I want people that are excited, just like I am, to come and work at Alliance. I want to empower people to run Alliance. I want people to feel in their system, in their body, that they own a piece of Alliance. And that's really what you have to do as a young person. You have to work on yourself. And that's so many different avenues. Yeah. And I tell that to my kids, because I see it's like, texting and emailing. And I'll say to my boys, I'll say, pick up the phone and call me. Well, I don't need to do that. I'll just text you simple. I'm like, no, you're not understanding the lesson I'm trying to teach. And I think that's a little bit of it and the other thing is, find a good mentor. Find someone that has been there and done that can kind of give you some guidance. They might not give you all the answers, and you got to make sure you pick and choose what they give you, but it's a good way to understand what did they do. And I always ask people, like, what did you do wrong? What'd you learn from it? What could you share from me saying, hey, I didn't own it. Okay. Just like my podcast. What was that moment you didn't own it? And people say, hey, you know what? I should have done more development on myself. I improved my communication, my writing. I should have read more books. You'll hear the answers that will solve a lot of the challenges that are coming down the pike in your life. And that's what I tell my kids. Be good listeners, work on yourself, be persistent, show up, be present in the moment. It was something as a young man I was not. And I mean, I don't have any regrets, but I look back and saying that's something I easily could have improved. I'm always thinking about the future and worried about the past as a young guy. Like, fuck, I screwed up on that, or if I do this, this will happen in the future. Instead of looking at what's really going on around me and the people, and that helps you manage people. It also helps you manage your life too. And so those are just some tidbits you can take with you, and your audience can. But be present, work on yourself, and be a good listener. And I think the rest will take care of it. And that's why I would tell your boys. I would say, look, Uncle Ben's going to give you some advice. And this is what I would tell them. And, obviously they're young. So it's like you want to enjoy your life as a kid. Right. But I don't think there's any better time when you become a teenager and maybe you got your first job and you're working at the ice cream shop or a donut shop or, wherever you worked for your summer job or during the school year. Those are good times to talk about all these different things, because you're starting to emotionally develop and say, my youngest is my daughter, and she got her first job. And what's so interesting is it's not really about the money. Yeah, I love that it gives her extra pocket change. And I love where she's working. It's my favorite donut shop in California. So I love it. What's it about is showing up, waking up, discipline, interacting with other people, learning what worked, what didn't work.
Treat customers right.
Right. Yeah, the customer experience. Yeah. So I can't put a price tag on what she's going to learn. And so those little things are so important. And all these things have a cumulative effect of who you become. And someone always says, like, how you do the small things are how you'll do bigger things. And if you learn that at a younger age, like, every moment of my life, I'm going to give 120%, which I would tell your boys, give 120%, whether my kids played sports, school, it's a little bit different out where we're from in Chicago. School is really discipline important compared to here where we live, it seems like. But with that being said, give 120%. Give and be present when you're doing it, because those little things, guess what? build better relationships, credibility, rapport, success. All starts from these little things we do.
That's right.
And people take them for granted. I'll just skate by,
Yeah.
skirt it. It's not important. My grades don't matter. It's not about the grades. It's about the experience, the knowledge, and the discipline you obtain from school or sports or whatever you're doing, or music or plays, whatever is you're passionate about when you're a kid. And if you can live like that, that will create wildly successful events for you in the future. And I teach my kids that. And so we'll see what ends up happening with all these guys.
That is great advice.
All right.
And I certainly appreciate you coming on today. Definitely check him out, Ben Reinberg. You've got all the websites. If you're interested in the type of investments he's doing, check out the fund, but definitely reach out and connect with him. And as always, if you like money, you like real estate, hit that subscribe button, and we'll see you on the next one.